So let's get deep dive role playing down, and let's see how it plays. Freaking nailed it!
20, bro.
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick Murphy. I'm one half of the Brothers Murph, and this is You Can Solo That? You Can Solo That is a series where I go through all the games that we have that have solo variants, and I solo them for you and tell you what I think about them. So this week, I am going to be soloing Role Player. Role Player is a wonderful game. It's a game that is just so perfect for gamers. Like, I love games that really, just get into themes that mostly we would like, us freaking nerds. This is a game about rolling out a character for D&D. That doesn't sound like much of a game, but it actually is. So you essentially have a different class, you have a different race and stuff like that from everyone else, and you're rolling out a character, and you're rolling die and putting the die in those slots to get your character stats. And there are different things you want to do, like for your constitution, you might want a specific number, like you need to have 18 in your constitution. So you have to put the die down in certain areas to make sure you're getting the numbers you want. And this game gets compared to Sagrada a lot. Like everyone said, it's like the gamer's Sagrada. And I don't know, I don't really I think it's an unfair comparison. They're similar in the fact that you're both rolling die and placing die, but other than that, they're not really anything alike. And it's just, I'm not against either one, but the comparison is odd to me because it's constantly brought up. So I just don't really get the Oh, Sagrada! No, it's not Sagrada, it's Role Player. Oh, well, they're like the same game, right? No, Role Player is like a different game. They're the exact same game. They both have dice in them. No, I know they both have dice, but that does not mean they're the same game. Nah, they got dice and you're putting them in little notches and windows. That means they're the exact same game. Yeah, both games have little windows that you put the dice in, but that's like it. Like, there's no other comparison. They're not the same theme. They don't play it anywhere similarly. We should continually compare them at every single moment of every single day. They're not the same game. They're two completely different games. They just kind of have a similar mechanic. Nah, it's just Gamer Sagrada. Well, not all worker placement games are the exact same game. I don't walk up when you're playing Viticulture and go, oh, Feast for Odin. And you're like, no, it's Viticulture. No, it's Feast for Odin. That's not how that goes. Are those not the same game? Ultimately, I really love both games. But today we're talking about Role Player. Role Player has a solo variant. And we're going to be talking about the Role Player solo variant, but then we also have the expansion. It's inside this box. The expansion is called Monsters and Minions. And I'm going to be talking about the solo rules for that game as well, because it's similar to this, but it's a little bit different. And I want to make sure that if you have both this and the expansion, that you know how to solo both of them. So let's get into the games and let's figure out how they play. Alright, so this is the general setup for Role Player Solo Edition. Like all my You Can Solo That videos, I'm only going to explain the differences between the solo game and the normal game. I'm not explaining how to play the whole game. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to explain the normal game, and then after this is done, I'm going to explain how to play it with the expansion. Because they're slightly different, and it'll get confusing if I try to do them all at the same time. So the setup for the normal game is pretty similar to a multiplayer game with 2 players, but let's get into a little bit of the differences right now. So just like in a normal game, you're going to pick a class, a random alignment, and a random backstory. You're going to reach in the bag, grab a random color of die, and that's going to be the class that you get to choose. And then you're going to go ahead and reach into the bag and pull out 6 die and assign them to whatever spots on your character sheet that you want to. Boom, boom, boom. I did not roll very well apparently the first time. And then you're good to go. You're going to start off with 5 money like you do in a normal game. So that's going to be it for your personal character board setup. It's pretty much done exactly like it is in a normal game. You're going to use initiatives cards 1, 2, and 3, just like you do in a normal 2-player game. You're going to put some gold on the number 2 spot, and then you're going to have a gold die that you need to keep by, and I'll explain why during the initiative phase. The last thing you have to do is set up the market. The market has these market cards right here, and the market cards are separated into 2 types. There's 1 dots and 2 dots. You're going to take out 7 1 dots and 7 2 dots out of the game, just like you would in a 2-player game. And then you're going to take the remainder of the 1 dots and you're going to give them a shuffle, shuffle. And you're going to take the remainder of the 2 dots, give them a shuffle, shuffle. And then you put the 2 dots on the bottom, the 1 dots on the top, straighten them out. And then you're going to have 3 cards in the market during the market phase like you do in a 2-player game. In a solo game, you can decide to take out the diplomacy card if you would like. Ultimately, you don't have to. If you draw this card, you can always just discard it and draw another one. It's kind of up to you. But this requires you to have other players in the game, so you can throw it out of the game. You don't really need it. The rollout phase takes place exactly like it does in a normal game. You're going to go into the bag, rummage around, grab 3 die. You're going to roll them and then put them in numerical order on the initiative cards. Again, the number 2 always has to have a gold, and if you take the number 2 initiative, you're going to get that gold. In the dice phase or the initiative phase, that is when this gold enemy die that we set aside earlier comes into play. If you decide to take the first die in the first initiative, nothing happens. You don't have to roll the die. You don't have to do anything. You're going first. You're good to go. If you decide to take the second initiative die, what you do is you then have to roll this enemy die. If you roll a 1, you have to take the leftmost market card and trash it out of the game. If you roll a 2, you take the second one and trash out of the game. If you roll a 3, you take the third one, trash out of the game. If you roll a 4, a 5, or a 6, nothing happens. Now, if you take the third initiative, a 1 or 2 takes this out of the game, a 2 or 3 takes this out of the game, and a 4 or 5 takes this out of the game. And this essentially is to signify other players going before you and taking these market cards before you can get them. And it's just kind of a way, again, to scale and get stuff out of there so that it still plays like a normal game. So again, you grab what initiative you want, you roll the die, see what happens, get rid of something if you need to. And now keep in mind, I said you trash the card. Whenever you get done with all the cards, they'll go into a discard pile, which could then get shuffled back through if you run out of cards. Now, if it says trash a card, that means you're throwing it out of the game, which again signifies another player having it, and therefore it's not available to you anymore. So keep in mind, whenever I say trash, I'm talking about throwing it out of the game. Okie doke, so now we're in the market phase. The market phase plays pretty much how it normally does. You have money and you can buy one of these cards. You can choose to discard one of these cards and get 2 golds. You can do pretty much everything in the exact same way. Now, when you're done with this phase, whatever's the leftmost card is going to get discarded, and then anything that wasn't used is going to get trashed. And again, trash means get out of the game for good. During the cleanup phase, we're going to take any unused die on initiative cards. We're going to throw them back in the bag, not including this enemy die. We want to keep this gold die out so we can continue to use it through the game. And then we're going to do the discarding and trashing market cards and then bring out 3 new market cards. And then we're good to go, and we're going to roll out and do the whole thing over again. The game ends in the exact same way as it does in a normal game. Once you fill up your whole character sheet here, you do all the scoring in the exact same way. There's not a win-lose condition in the normal game, and so the way you figure out how well you did is by this chart over here. And cool, that's how good you did. So that's how you play the normal game. Now we're going to go through the Monsters and Minions expansion, talk about how you solo that. For the most part, it's pretty similar, but there are some changes. Let's go through them right now. All right, so this is the setup for the Monsters and Minions expansion for Role Player. For the most part, a lot of it sets up pretty much the same way in terms of rolling out your 6 die. You're getting a person, you're getting, a random alignment and a random class and a random backstory. All that stuff is exactly the same. You still put out 3 initiative cards. You are always now going to put out 4 market cards, and then you have to set up the minion deck, which, like the market cards, some have 1 dot, some have 2 dots. You put the 2 dots underneath the 1 dots. The 1 dots are on top. Boom, boom. And then you're gonna have to pick out a big bad monster that you're gonna fight at the end of the game. Now, the monsters here work a little bit different. In the game, you get 2 different monster cards. They have different health, but the main difference is you can see down here once we focus. There we go. One of them says 1 player, and then one says 2+ player. You want to make sure you're grabbing the 1 player one, which is a little bit stronger. And same in a normal game, you can't choose a big bad monster that's the same as your class. So my class here is purple, so I couldn't choose the Chimera, which is purple. But the Kraken here is fine, and so is this Dragon. And then you're going to set up their location, their obstacle, and their attack cards face down per usual. Put the little tokies, little trophy tokens, put out some combat die, get some experience points. This thing you don't really need, I just like it. And then put out the injuries and the honor tokens in your big bag of die, and make sure to include the boost die in there now, which are big and fancy. For the market deck, you're still going to take out some cards. You have your 1-dot cards and your 2-dot cards, but instead of taking out 7, you're going to take out 16, and then you're going to take out another 16 of both. You're going to put these on top of each other, and then this is going to form the discard pile. So you start off with a big discard pile, and again, anytime you need to trash something, it goes out of the game. Otherwise, it comes here to the discard pile and would get shuffled back through if you ever ran out of this one. You're going to need to keep out 2 gold die for the initiative phase instead of 1. These are those gold enemy dies, and you need to keep out 2 this time instead of 1 with the Monsters and Minions expansion. Now, along with the Diplomacy card, you should take out the Spellbook and the Energy Field card because they depend on other players. Again, you can take these out or leave them in and then just discard them if you find them, but that's kind of up to you. But now these 3 are in the game with the expansion, so you can take these out if you want to. The roll phase takes place exactly how it does. You rummage around the bag, grab 3 die, you roll them out, and then you put them in numerical order. Or in this case, if you get some of the same number, like in the normal game, you get to choose which ones they go onto. But for sake, let's do this. Boom, 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 in numerical order, just like that. And then now we go on to the dice phase or the initiative phase, which works a teeny bit differently than it did in the normal game. So let's get into that now. So the dice phase or the initiative phase, again, works in the same way, whereas if you take the first initiative, nothing happens. If you take the second or the third initiative, you have to roll enemy die. Now, the reason there's 2 is if you take the second initiative, you're going to go ahead and take one of the enemy die and roll them. If you roll a 1, you trash this card. If you roll a 2, you trash this one, 3, this one, a 4, this one. Now, what's different is if you roll a 5 or a 6, you take the top card of the minion deck, put it on the bottom, and then draw a new card out. So if you were really banking on fighting that giant scorpion, it's gone. There's a displacer here now. Now, if you decide to take initiative number 3, you have to roll both of these die. And in this situation, we would get rid of card number 3 because of the 3, and then because on a 5 or 6, we would have to get rid of this displacer by displacer and have to bring out a dire wolf in this situation. You cannot roll doubles on these. If you roll doubles, take one and re-roll it until you get a different value, and then do that. And then the market phase takes place like it does in a normal game, and especially a normal solo game where you can buy whatever is still here. If you end up buying this, whatever's left over, the leftmost card is going to be going to the discard pile. The rest of them will get trashed and out of the game. And then during the cleanup phase, you bring out 4 new cards. Going on a hunt or fighting these minions and stuff like this works exactly the same. You're going to take the minion, take whatever combat die you get from the minion, you're going to roll out and see what you get. So you either get experience cubes, you can get injury tokens, and you can get trophies. And trophies, again, work in the same way. If you get their first trophy, you're going to get to look at location, figure out what it is so you can get some information about fighting the big boss. Second trophy, you do the obstacle. Third trophy, you do the attack. During the cleanup phase, when you put all the initiative back here without die, you put the die back in the bag. Again, make sure to leave these enemy die here because you need to keep these ones out for the rest of the game. Now, the endgame fight works pretty much exactly how it does in a normal game, with the exception of these cards right here. Again, a lot of times they work the same, but there are certain ones like this dungeon here. You can see down here it says 1 player max 4. So to get this, the max you can have of gold die is 4. If you have any more, then you essentially don't get this anymore. So you don't just get to play exactly however you want. You still have to follow some parameters. And for something like this spiked pit trap, the player with the most boost die on their character sheet gains 4 XP. But again, you're the only person, so you could potentially have a billion, right? No. The minimum you can have is 3. So you have to have at least 3 to qualify for this. If you have that, then you still get this one. But if you don't, then you don't. Words, Nick. Good job. So once you get all your combat die and you turn in all your experience for stuff and you roll out and you see what you did. Now remember, when you roll out, you have to hit the dragon or whatever monster you're fighting at least their minimum amount. In a normal game, you don't have to, but in a solo game, you do. You have to hit them at least once. So you have to roll at least 16. If you don't, you lose the whole game straight up. But then once you hit 16, then you get to calculate your points, and let's see how that rolls. Scoring takes place exactly the same it does in a normal game, with the exception of in the Monsters and Minions expansion, there is a win-lose condition. Yes! But after that, if you do hit the monster at least once, then it goes back to the whole like beat your best score thing, and it has a slightly different table, which is here. Boop. And you can go by that table and find out how you did. But at least there's a win-lose condition. Thank the Lord. So that was Role Player Solo. So what I think. That's what you're here for, my opinion, not yours. That's unnecessary, Nick. So what do I think? I like it. I like it a lot. My biggest beef, per usual, is that there's not a win-lose condition. You know that's my biggest pet peeve in solo games. If you've watched any of mine, I constantly talk about it. In the normal game, there's not a win-lose condition. In the expansion, there is, because if you don't at least hit the big monster in the very, very end, you lose outright. I like that. I still think it's a pretty weak win-lose condition. Like, I like solo games that are hard. Like, I want to lose the vast majority of them that I play. And that isn't really that hard of a win-lose condition. But you know what? At least it's there. I'll give it that. And then after that, it's just trying to beat your score. I think the game is easier than it is in a normal game just because there's no one to compete with, which is kind of like the whole point of a solo game. And I do feel like, at least in the few games that I've played, it's been a little open in terms of, like, I haven't had that much of a struggle of getting what I need, particularly when you're coming to placing die in your character sheet. That can be excruciating during a game because you're like, oh, I really need a 5. And then someone else takes the 5. And then you have to try and figure it out with your character abilities how to get the numbers that you need. And a lot of times you can't. I've played this game, I think 3 times solo now. And every single time I've been able to get all the numbers that I needed. Because it's just easier to do it that way. And so I wish there was a way, I don't know what it would be, but I wish, particularly with the initiative die, I wish there was a way for you to not always get the first pick. I don't know what that would be. I just wish there was. I like the fact that if you take the first initiative, you don't get your first choice at market cards. Depending on what you roll on the enemy die, the gold die that you set aside, some of the market cards and stuff might go away. Or the minion in the minion deck might go away. I do like that because it has that kind of thing that I was talking about where some of your choices are taken away from you. I wish the initiative die was a little bit like that, but I kind of understand why it's not. In a solo game, you're essentially always the first player, and so why wouldn't you get to choose initiative first? So I get why it is that way, but it's a little thing that I wish it was a little harder for me to do that. But ultimately, I really liked it. I like it a lot. It's pretty relaxing. I find dice games, solo dice games, pretty relaxing, where I'm just kind of like, all right, just boom, 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 boom. In a normal game, I'm usually like sweating, stressed out, because I'm just like, trying to figure out my puzzle. This one doesn't feel that way when it's solos. For me, it's a much more kind of relaxing, rolling, still thinky, still puzzly, still trying to do stuff, but is really, really kind of nice. People ask, I streamed this game on Twitch. And a lot of people asked about the expansion. And a lot of people out there say, like, oh, the expansion is an absolute essential. You have to have the expansion. Once you go to the expansion, you'll never, ever go back. I'm kind of hit and miss on the expansion. I really like it, but I'm kind of take it or leave it. You know, if I didn't have it, whatever. If I did have it, cool. We do happen to have it, and so I really like it a lot. But in the solo game, I don't ever want to play without the expansion. Just that little bit of extra things that you have to do in fighting the monsters and fighting the minions and having the big boss fight at the very, very end, to me makes a difference. Without that, the game I feel like would be, it's not quite enough. I did play it once without it, and I didn't like it nearly as much. So at least for me, having the expansion is kind of a must with the solo. But again, that's just me and how I feel about it. So overall, I really like Role Player. Again, I wish there was a more definitive win-lose condition than just beating the monster and then whatever your score is your score. But even then, it's still a really, really fun game. It's a really fun solo game. I'm glad that there's a thought-out solo variant. It's not just like oh, yeah, you can play solo by doing this. This one, they actually thought about it. They're like, okay, no, you have to roll these die and get rid of these things because that simulates other players and da-da-da. And I like that. That's, at the very, very least, I'm glad they thought about it. It wasn't just a tack on. So that is my thoughts on Role Player Solo Edition. Let me know in the comments down below whether or not you've played it, how you feel about it, whether I'm right or wrong about my opinion about it. So please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Please share this video. Solo gamers are a big part of gaming, and we want to make sure that they know what games are good and what games are bad to solo. And be sure to check me out on Twitch every Saturday. Mike is always at work on Saturdays, and so at 9 a.m. West Coast time on Saturdays, I stream on Twitch. I'm usually soloing a game. Sometimes I do art, sometimes I paint minis, but it's always just me for the most part, and a lot of times I'm soloing games. So if you really want to see a full live playthrough of a game, Twitch is the place to do it. 9 a.m. Saturday mornings. Let's play some games. But until next time, I'm Nick Murphy of the Brothers Murph, and this is You Can Solo That? Role player?
Now, we all know that Nick is the artist, but I'll bet you I can sketch you right now. And while I'm doing this amazing sketch, check out Restoration Games. They sponsor us, and there's information for where to find their games, not illustrations, down below. And this has gone off the rail. I'm so sorry. You are way more beautiful than that. But go ahead and click over another video. I fail.